One thing I can always count on and that continuously amazes me is the wisdom of God. Some people call it coincidences, other people see it as the universe at work or whatever. But regardless of what you want to call it, there's always intention and purpose in the things we as humans have to go through. Specifically, the surprising fact that we usually get answers before we're given the questions or trials. Unfortunately, many of us are blind to that fact and we miss out on so much beauty and light because we're too focused on the now and we forget where we come from and where we're going. Hey lovies, welcome back to Lightly. I'm Katt and I hope you're having a beautiful day. Okay, so that introduction is kind of ominous and vague. So I'm gonna try to bring it home. Bear in mind that I'm saying all of this from my perspective as a Christian. If this is real to you in a different kind of way, please let me know. I am constantly fascinated and amazed by how people see God, especially when they don't call it God. But I digress. It is unavoidable that we go through trials and tribulations in life. We're never promised a problem-free life. Instead, we're promised God's presence and might in the face of whatever problems we may have. That's already a given. What's surprising to me is this. We usually get answers before we're even given the questions or trials. The trials will tempt a certain disbelief in us all the time with a variety of questions and doubts, and God's sovereignty, already knowing this and never ever being caught off guard, will have already given us answers to fight that disbelief. That answer could be a word, an affirmation, a promise, anything before you even think it's necessary. Whenever we're aware of this, whenever we hold on to these answers He's already given, we can breathe through these trials seamlessly and peacefully. Now, is that or isn't that wise of God? Now, before you answer, I'd like to give you a couple of examples of how this can happen to further explain and prove my point. The first example is found in Mark 1st. There's so much going on in this chapter. It's so beautiful, but I want to focus on the baptism of Jesus verses 9 through 11 and the temptation that happens right after, starting at verse 12. This is the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He goes up to be baptized by John the Baptist, and as soon as he rises from the water, a voice comes from heaven and says, "You are my beloved Son. In you I am well pleased." But basically, God speaks out from heaven and says, "This is my Son." Cool. This is a very amazing moment and it's a beautiful experience, but that is not what I want to focus on right now. After that, the Spirit of God immediately drives Jesus to the wilderness. A parenthesis here, something I want to point out. We tend to forget that it was the Spirit of God who took Jesus into the wilderness. This is a part of God's plan for His life and for His ministry. It's important that we recognize this because we might be tempted to believe that God had abandoned Jesus, that God did not love Him enough, that God wasn't pleased with Him because He was being tempted in some kind of way. But this is a part of God's plan for a bigger purpose. Now we close that parenthesis and we notice, I think in Matthew or in another gospel, we're given a greater description of what this temptation looks like. And basically, the devil keeps asking Jesus, "Are you really the Son of God? Do you really have that much power? Well, if you do, turn this rock into bread. Well, if you do this and that. Well, if you do, etc., etc." And then he just kind of keeps questioning Jesus's identity. Not unlike a lot of things that happen to us. Whenever we're facing some kind of problem, we question, where is our God? Am I really a daughter? Am I really loved? If I were loved, I don't think I'd be going through this. But remember, a couple of verses before that, God has already established, "You are my Son." We see this as a beautiful thing, but we don't see it as a necessary thing, considering that Jesus already knew that He was God's Son. This is why it's important, because God knew what was about to happen. God knew how important it was that He had this identity reaffirmed because a trial was coming up that would question this. You get what I'm saying? Now is a biblical example. Now I'm going to try to explain how this has happened in my own life. The closest example would be 2020. This is a very chaotic and weird year. Nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows what to do, how to go about it. But I remember before this year started, my God told me 2020 will be the best year of your life yet. You're gonna live amazing things. I have so many things in store for you, etc. and etc. Before this lockdown situation started, I remember I made a video on Instagram kind of describing how peaceful I was, how happy I was, because regardless of everything that was happening, I had a promise. I had something to hold on to. But after I was put in lockdown, after a couple months in confined and feeling like nothing is really progressing, I remembered God speaking to me through me. I watched that video again and again, and I kept remembering God already told me. When He made me a promise, He was not unaware of all of this that would be happening. God is not forgetful. He's not distracted. He's not out of control, even still, even now. So I just need to know, well, before I was brought into this wilderness, into this uncomfortable situation, my God promised me something. And if He said that when He did, and I believe that He's not a liar, I just need to hold on to that promise. The second example is kind of a funny story, at least to me. It happened when I was in my first ever encounter with God. It was actually an event called an encounter with God, and during the event we had to go through this, they called it like the hallway of dreams, where basically all the leaders were paired up and we were gonna walk in between them, and they would just prophesy God's life over our lives, specifically speaking about our futures. So they were like, think about any kind of dream that you might have let die because you didn't think God wanted to or was able to fulfill that, and we believe that God will speak to us and we will be used to revive those dreams. I was like, amen. I was 15 at the time, and I was in my senior year of high school, and I was legit like, I just want to study abroad. That was the only thing I cared about. I was like, I want to go to London. That was my dream. I walked through the hallway, and people were just talking to me about family. And I was like, for what? Don't get me wrong, they were amazing. I really felt the presence of God, and I could hear them. In the beginning, I was like, yes, amen, amen, because family is important too, right? I did want to get married and have kids, etc. So it was really cool that they were just speaking that over my life. Your family is going to be led by God. It's going to be amazing, yada, yada, yada. It was cool. My problem was with the fact that everyone kept talking about that. Oh, your family, or your kids, oh, your husband, your family, your husband. I was like, bruh, ain't nobody here London? Did God, like, seriously, you didn't hear that from the Lord? Are you sure though? I was so annoyed. Because I was like, God, I don't care. And then I remember I opened a passage in the Bible that said something about don't worry. I was like, wow, all right, cool. The thing is, a couple years later though, I don't know, I grew up and I started noticing things in other people's romantic relationships, all the way from Hollywood to people in my family. And I was just like, marriage is weird. Like, I would see a lot of people being walked on and just, not being completely happy or being cheated on and things like that. And I was like, oh, I don't want that. And suddenly it became really, really overwhelming. And then I remembered, well, I don't gotta worry about that happening to me because my God already told. And then I was like, oh, my God already told me. He knew all of these things would happen. He knew I'd have this weird avalanche of misguided information and all of these things wrong with marriage. I don't have to worry about that. That's cool. That's good. Like, a lot of people are like, you need to pray for your marriage because otherwise this could. And I do believe in that. I kind of am praying, but I don't have to worry about it because God told me about it, And I'm already at peace with the whole London situation. Not gonna live there right now. I mean, we don't know what could happen. But it was weird that I didn't think that was necessary, but it was. God knew that it was. So I say all of this to say God is never unaware of anything. And in his wisdom and grace, he decides to prepare us for what's coming, because we're never supposed to go through it alone. When he calls his people to be strong and courageous, it is because trials are coming and we will need to be strong for those. But it's also because he is with us. He literally says that I am with you, I am for you. So be strong and courageous. You have nothing to fear. So I hope we start paying more attention to the instructions and the promises God gives us. God will never send you somewhere to fail. So if he told you to go and do that, remember that. Oh my God, another example. This wasn't even scripted, but I just thought of that. When Jesus and his disciples got in the boat and they were surprised by the storm that came their way, they panicked because they thought they were going to die in the sea. But Jesus says, let us go to the other side. If Jesus says that, that means we're going to get to the other side. So while you're in the storm, you need to remember, he's told me I'm going to go there. And that is what will give you peace. Before you start worrying about anything, remember what God told you about it. Before you start questioning who you are, remember what God told you about you. If he promises you something, he knows it will happen. He wouldn't lie. God is not a liar. So, like, as you're walking through the desert, remember that God has been preparing Canaan for you for years. So he will not allow you to die here because he promised that you would make it there. I hope we start paying more attention to his instructions and promises and affirmations, or, you know, whatever signs the universe sends you, because nothing is accidental and every moment is an opportunity for a miracle. Bye. Enjoy this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, please. Like, comment, share it with whoever you might think needs this, and talk to me in the comments down below what you thought of this video, what you want to talk about next, whatever. Relations in life, we're never it is unavoidable that, especially when they don't call it God. So let's talk. I don't give a rat's ass about a husband. I don't care. I just want to go to London. Oh my